Some legends belong to the woods, some wait by the roads, rivers, or swamp water, and some belong in the desert. A shape in the dark that moves wrong, a presence people are taught not to speak about lightly, and something huge crossing the open land with a rider no one can explain. Two legends, two states, one landscape that knows how to make distance feel dangerous. Tonight, we head to the American Southwest, where the land is wide, the silence is deep, and whatever is out there can see you long before you ever see it. I'm Quackster, and this is Quack in the Dark, Urban Legends Edition. Welcome back, everyone. This season, we've crossed haunted roads, watched ridgelines, stepped into swamps, and followed warnings all over America and beyond. But tonight's episode is different, because some legends are not just scary. They are spoken about carefully, respected carefully, avoided carefully. Tonight's episode is called Desert Warnings. First, we head into the Four Corners region for one of the most feared and most cautiously discussed legends in the Southwest, the Skinwalker. Then we cross into Arizona, where one of the strangest stories in frontier legend still survives. A monstrous camel charging through the desert with something terrible tied to its back. The Red Ghost. One is a presence people are warned not to invite closer. The other is desert horror people once saw coming in broad daylight and still could not explain. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Don't trust every shape in the dark. And if something in the desert seems to be moving too fast, too quietly, or too strangely, leave it alone. Story 1. The Skinwalker. By the time Aaron realized the animal was pacing the truck, he had already convinced himself twice that this was just a coyote. That was the problem with the desert roads at night. Distance lied, shapes blurred, and the mind always reached for the most ordinary answer first, because the second answer was usually worse. The road stretched empty ahead of him, a thin ribbon of black cutting through the scrub and rock beneath a moon too sharp to be comforting. His headlights swept over brush, fence posts, dry washes, and scattered shadows that seemed to disappear with every slight turn of the wheel. He was 20 minutes from home. The gas gauge was lower than he liked. The radio had faded into static 10 miles back, and something had been running alongside the truck for longer than any normal animal should have been able to keep up. At first, he only caught glimpses, movement just outside the beam, a shape low to the ground, then gone, then there again. He leaned closer to the windshield. Coyote, he told himself. Maybe a stray dog. Maybe his own nerves, making every flash of brush look alive. Then the thing stepped fully into the light, and Aaron felt every calm thought leave him all at once. It looked like a coyote until it didn't. His body was too long. Its legs seemed wrong, somehow not bent naturally, not moving with the smooth rhythm of an animal built to run. Its eyes caught the headlights and held them too steadily. And when it turned its head toward the truck, there was something in the motion that felt deliberate in the way no wild animal should have felt. Not curious, but aware. Aaron pressed harder on the gas. The speedometer climbed. The thing kept pace. Its paws hit the dirt shoulder in a blur, but its body didn't seem to labor. It didn't pant, didn't fall back. It simply ran beside him as if matching the truck was the easiest thing in the world. Then, for one impossible second, it lifted higher. Not rearing, not leaping. Just rising enough that its silhouette in the corner of his eye stopped looking like an animal at all and started looking horribly, unmistakably human. Aaron swerved. The truck fishtailed once, tires spitting gravel, before he dragged it back straight. When he looked again, the thing was no longer beside him. It was ahead, standing in the road. He hit his brakes so hard, his chest slammed the wheel. The headlights flooded the figure. Tall, lean, wrong. Not fully human, not fully anything he could name. Just a shape with too much intention in it. Motionless in the center of the road where nothing should have been able to get ahead of him that fast. Then the light flickered. Just once. And the road was empty. Aaron didn't stop driving again until he reached home. And even then he sat in his truck with the engine running, staring into the dark beyond the porch light and trying to decide whether the fear had made him see more than what was there. His grandmother made the decision for him. He described only part of it, not all of it. Not the standing shape, not the eyes, not the way it seemed to understand him. She listened. Then she told him very quietly not to talk about it again unless he had to. Because where he came from, there was already a name people used carefully for things like that. Skinwalker. The Skinwalker is one of the most feared legends associated with Navajo tradition, and it's one people often speak about with real caution rather than casual curiosity. Because of that, it deserves to be approached very respectfully. In popular retellings, the Skinwalker is often described as a harmful witch or malevolent being, associated with transformation, disguise, unnatural speed, and the ability to appear as an animal, human, or something disturbingly in between. Stories vary widely outside their cultural roots, and many modern versions have been exaggerated, flattened, or turned into an internet horror. But the fear around the legend is older and deeper than that. That's what matters. What gives the Skinwalker its power in imagination is not flashy violence, it's violation. The sense that something has crossed a boundary it never should have crossed. Animal becoming human, human becoming animal. A voice sounding almost familiar in a wrong place. A shape that should move one way, moving another. The fear comes from wrongness, and wrongness is harder to fight than a visible threat. That's why so many stories built around the Skinwalker have the same emotional core. You see something at a distance and tell yourself it's ordinary. A coyote, a deer, a man by the fence line, a voice outside the house, something on the roof. And the one detail shifts. It runs too fast. It stands too straight. It smiles at the wrong moment. It sounds and knows where you are. It looks back with human understanding. That is the trap, not the reveal. The moment just before the reveal, when your mind is still trying to preserve the world you thought you were in. The Southwest is the perfect landscape for the kind of fear. Wide open ground, long roads, sparse lights, houses separated by distance and silence. In a place like that, when something appears near your home or your vehicle after dark, there is very little between you and it. No crowded street, no immediate help, no comforting city noise to flatten the imagination. Just land. And whatever the land may already be holding, that's part of why the legend has spread so powerfully beyond the origins, even when many retellings miss the cultural weight behind it. Because the feeling is universal. The feeling that something is out there pretending well enough to get close. The feeling that the desert is not empty, only selective about when it shows you what's crossing it. And most of all, the feeling that you are not dealing with an animal behaving like an animal. You are dealing with intention. That may be the darkest part of the Skinwalker legend. Not fangs, not claws, not chase. Intent. A predator is frightening. A presence that seems to understand fear, timing, and the shape of your attention is worse. Because when you stop asking, what is it? And start asking, why is that here? In many stories, the answer is never given cleanly. That's another reason the legend works. It refuses to resolve. People hear something on the roof, find tracks where tracks should not be, see an animal staring too long from the fence line, hear knocking or whistling where no one should be. And even when nothing happens after that, the unease stays. Because some legends do not need an ending. They only need access. Maybe every Skinwalker story is just fear shaped by darkness, distance, and the old human habit of giving strange encounters a larger name. Maybe a coyote is in bad light, a person at the wrong hour, and a landscape already charged with caution can create something that feels supernatural without ever becoming it. Or maybe some boundaries really are there for a reason, and the stories that warn people away from certain presences survive because not everything in the dark is meant to be investigated. Either way, if something on a desert road seems to be keeping pace with your truck when it should have fallen behind miles ago, do not roll the window down. The Skinwalker legend is all about closeness. The wrong shape near the house, the wrong movement beside the road, the wrong feeling that something understands you. But our next story is different, because this time the terror is impossible to miss. Huge, violent, out in the open, and somehow still no easier to explain. Let's head to Arizona. If you're enjoying tonight's episode, make sure you're following Quack in the Dark and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. That support helps more people find the show and helps the audience keep growing. And if your hometown has a desert legend, roadside warning, or a story people still tell carefully after dark, send it to me on Facebook, Instagram, or Discord at Quack in the Dark under Quacktastic Studios, or on Discord under Quacktastic Studios. I want to hear what parts of the map people in your world still avoid after sunset. Now let's move deeper into the Southwest. Where one legend did not creep through the dark, it charged straight through it. The first thing Samuel heard was the screaming. Not human, not horse, not anything that fit cleanly into either. A harsh, ragged sound rolling over the Arizona brush in the heat of the late afternoon, loud enough to send the cattle shifting and men on the fence line reaching for rifles before they knew what they were aiming at. Samuel stood, shaded his eyes, and looked toward the rise west of the property. Dust. That was all he saw at first. A moving wall of it, fast and low, coming hard across the open ground. Then something burst through it, and every man there forgot for one stunned second how to breathe. It was a camel. But camel was not enough. The animal was massive, wild-eyed, froth hanging at its mouth, long legs driving it over the land with terrifying speed. Its hide looked dark red under the desert sun. Whether from dust, blood, or the color of its coat, no one could tell in the moment. And strapped to its back, lashed or fused by panic and distance into a horrible shape, was something that looked like a human body, not riding and not holding on, but tied there. Dead, maybe, or nearly. Samuel raised the rifle, but didn't fire. None of them did. The thing was moving too fast, too wildly, and too impossibly. It thundered past the fence line in a storm of dust and noise, the body on its back jerking sickeningly with every stride, and was gone toward the far wash before their thoughts caught up enough to turn into words. For the next hour, nobody agreed on what they had seen. A nightmare? A trick of heat? A soldier's animal gone savage? A man being carried off? A demon in broad daylight? By evening, the story had already changed the shape of the way the frontier stories always do. By the end of the week, it had a name. The Red Ghost. The Red Ghost is one of Arizona's strangest frontier legends because, unlike many stories in this season, it begins with something so physically large and immediate that imagination barely has time to prepare itself. A monstrous red camel. A corpse strapped to its back. A violent animal crossing open desert while nothing that size should have appeared suddenly enough to frighten seasoned people into silence. The image was so bizarre it feels fictional on contact, which is exactly why it lasted. Part of the legend's power comes from history. In American Southwest during the mid-1800s, camels really were brought into parts of the region for military and transport experts. That fact sounds absurd until you know it's true, which makes the leap from history to folklore much easier. Once the practical project collapsed and some animals were released, sold, or lost, the desert suddenly had something it had never had before. Great foreign silhouettes, moving where only horses and cattle were expected. That alone should have been enough to start stories. But the Red Ghost goes further. Because in the legend, the camel is not merely out of place. It is violent, unstoppable, and attached to death. That changes everything. A strange animal can become a curiosity. A strange animal carrying a body becomes omen. Now, the desert is not just hosting something unusual. It's staging horror. And frontier landscapes were ideal for that kind of story. In a place of dust, heat shimmer, and isolation and distance, people often saw something before they understood it. By the time understanding arrived, fear had already shaped the memory into something sharper. That's the engine of the Red Ghost. You do not first think, interesting, a camel. You think, what in God's name is that? The rawness is why the legend endures. The Red Ghost is not elegant, not subtle, not spiritual in the way that some other legends are. It has impact, noise, size, violence, and a visual no one expects from the American desert. A camel alone is strange enough. A camel painted red by dust and panic carried death on its back, becomes something myth can't resist. Arizona also gives the legend exactly the right stage. Open country, sparse settlements, long sightings, the kind of heat and distance that turn every movement into a question until it gets close enough to being a problem. In that environment, something huge and fast has plenty of room to become memory before it ever has an explanation. And once multiple people carry pieces of the same story, folklore takes over. Some versions of the Red Ghost emphasize attacks. Some focus on sightings, some on livestock panic, some on the body strapped to the camel. The details shift, but the emotional core remains the same. Something impossible crossed the desert, and enough people saw it to keep the story alive. That last part matters, because ghost doesn't feel like a solitary hallucination. It feels communal. A legend assembled from shared witness, frontier rumor, and the fact that real history was already strange enough to support it. That's what makes it so satisfying as folklore. You don't have to choose completely between fact and fantasy. The desert already gave you enough of both. And maybe that's why the Red Ghost still feels unsettling now, because it reminds us that not all great legends are born in the mist and shadow. Some are born under hard sunlight, with nothing to hide behind but speed, dust, and the mind's inability to process what it's seeing before it's already gone. A shape on the horizon becomes a beast becomes a story, and a story becomes a warning. And somewhere in the middle of that, the truth stops mattering as much as the image. Maybe the Red Ghost was only the monstrous afterlife of a failed military idea, an escaped camel, and the kind of rough storytelling that frontier terror sharpens quickly. Maybe every sighting added dust, blood, and rumor until the animal stopped being an animal and became the desert's own bad dream. Or maybe the Arizona desert once really did watch a red camel thunder across the land with death tied to its back, and the people who saw it never found a better way to describe the feeling than to give a ghost the name. Either way, if you see something huge moving across open desert where no animal that size should be, do not wait around for it to get close enough to explain itself. Two legends, two desert warnings, two very different kinds of fear. The Skinwalker turns the familiar wrong, an animal that moves with too much intention, a human shape that arrives where it should not, a presence people speak about carefully because getting too curious feels like a mistake. The Red Ghost, however, turns the impossible visible, a monstrous shape crossing open land so violently and so absurdly that the only way to hold on is to make sure it's legend. One is about wrongness up close, the other is about terror at full speed in plain sight. Both survive because the desert does something few places do well. It gives fear room. Room to approach, room to be seen too late, room to become a story before explanation catches up. And maybe that's why desert legends stay alive. Because when the land is that wide and the silence is that deep, even one impossible shape is enough to haunt the whole horizon. So tonight, everyone, I want to know, which one gets under your skin more? The thing on the roadside that looks almost natural until it suddenly doesn't? Or the red beast charging across Arizona with death strapped to its back? Come tell me on Facebook, Instagram, and Discord under Quacktastic Studios. And if your town has a desert legend, a warning people don't say lightly, or a story tied to open land and a bad night road, send it my way. It may end up in a future episode of Quack in the Dark. I'm Quackster, and this has been Quack in the Dark. Watch the fence line, trust the feeling that tells you not to stop. And if something in the desert seems to know exactly where you are, don't let it know you noticed.